Hello, my name is Michael Massman. I'm an attorney with Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. And this presentation is about protecting your money and assets in the event that you lose a debt collection lawsuit. The presentation is meant as information only. It is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, you should consult an attorney on the specifics of your own individual case. Now, before we talk about how to protect money and assets, we're going to talk a little bit about how cases like this can end. So one way is for the defendant to win. That means the defendant has proved to the judge that they do not owe the money, and if that's the case, then the case will go away. Another way is to settle this, and you can settle it with a payment plan or a single lump sum payment, often for a little bit less that you're sued than what you're sued for, depending on the circumstances of your case. Another way is for the plaintiff or the creditor to win, and if they do so, they're going to try to collect from you. So this video is about what you can do in the event that the creditor wins to protect your money and assets. So first of all, you should be aware that some of that income and some of that income and those assets are protected by law. So Social Security income, for example, cannot be used to pay a judgment for a small consumer debt. Similarly, equity in your home and your car are protected to a certain extent. And we're going to talk on the next slide about the three main ways that we see judgment creditors seeking to enforce debts. But I'm going to tell you right now that forcing the sale of a car is not one that we see because of the equity that's protected in the car and the transactional costs in making a sale happen. We have not seen that. The more realistic concerns are what you see here: a lien on the home, garnishment of wages, or a levy on the bank account. So we're going to talk about each one of these a little bit in the following slides. And again, these can only happen if the creditor obtains a judgment. They need a judgment to do this. So they need the judge to tell them that they can do this. So what does the lien mean? If they get a judgment, they record it with the county, and that means they've got a secured interest in your home. What does that mean? Well, it does not mean that they can take your home, and it does not mean that they can force you to sell the home. It does mean that the lien will remain on your home, and the judgment will be collecting interest. Judgment lasts for 10 years. Right now, as of December 2025, in California, a small consumer judgment can be renewed for another 5 years. But after that, it will expire, and the lien will expire with the judgment. If you sell the home before that happens, though, the lien holder will be entitled to a priority payment from the proceeds of that sale. Garnishing wages. This, I think, is the most common thing we see at the Self-Help Center and with debtors coming to Neighborhood Legal Services that have lost a lawsuit like this. So first of all, garnishment is limited by law. The description of how it's limited is a bit of a mouthful. It says it's the maximum of the lesser of 20% of your disposable earnings or 40% of the amount by which disposable earnings exceed minimum wage. So there's a little bit more information on that in the court's self-help website, and there are links to that to come. But one of the important things I want people to understand from this is that if you make minimum wage, you're not going to be garnished because of the way it is calculated. They have to calculate your disposable incomes and then calculate the applicable minimum wage. And you shouldn't be garnished if you're making minimum wage unless you're doing a lot of overtime, perhaps. If you are being garnished, you should reach out to Neighborhood Legal Services, another organization, or look for a way to do something about that, and we're going to talk about that in some coming slides. So the other thing we see a lot is a levy on the bank account, and that's where the creditor attempts to take money from a bank account. Now, they're required to leave you with a certain amount of money in your account. Right now, 2025, December, that's a little over $2,000 in California. So the way a levy works is it sort of goes through your bank account the way a net would go through the ocean looking for fish, and it scoops up money that is eligible to satisfy this debt. Some money that is not, again, includes Social Security. So if that money is in your bank account, they should not take it. If it's electronically transferred in, it should be marked as such and should be protected. One important thing to remember with protected funds, such as the ones you see listed here, is not to mingle them, or commingle is the legal term or technical term, with other income. So for example, if you have Social Security income, that's protected. And if you get $500, say, as a Christmas gift from a family member, and you put them in the same account, they mix together, you can't tell what's Social Security and you can't tell what's the gift, and you risk losing it all. So it's important to have a separate account for exempt funds that are protected so you can clearly indicate that they are exempt funds. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. If any of this happens, or more specifically, if a levy or a wage garnishment happens, what you can do to protect your income, or to assert to the judge and the other side that you need everything you have, is to file a claim of exemption with a levying officer. And that's going to be the sheriff in California. So a claim of exemption, and you see the copy of the form here, is a court form that you fill out, but you don't file it with the court. You take it to the sheriff, and generally you can find a sheriff's office in the courthouse where the judgment was obtained. If not, they're available online, and you're always welcome to reach out to Neighborhood Legal Services. But the claim of exemption form is what you want to do to protect your money. Now, importantly, you have a very limited amount of time to respond. If your wages are being garnished, you got to respond within 10 calendar days from notification. If you do not do that, you risk the garnishment continuing. So what happens is you send the claim of exemption to the sheriff sends it to the creditor, and even if the creditor objects, the garnishment will stop until it can be put in front of a judge. But if you don't do it within 10 days, the garnishment will continue until it's been in front of a judge. So it's to your advantage to do it quickly rather than later. Now, that's even more important with a levy, because if the money goes out of your bank account, it's very hard to get it back. So generally speaking, you have 15 calendar days to respond. I would not waste any time with that. While it may be applied a little bit loosely, you don't want to come up against that deadline, because getting money back from a levy is very challenging. Important note about the claim of exemption form. If you're married, even if your spouse is not named in the lawsuit, they have to fill out the claim of exemption with you, or their information has to be put on the claim of exemption and they have to sign it. Again, the mechanics of it, if the creditor objects to the claim of exemption that you're going to deliver to the sheriff, there'll be a hearing in front of the judge. That's usually going to be a month or two out from when you dropped it off, potentially more, depending on how busy the court is at that time. Help with a claim of exemption. So first of all, you're always willing to, or encouraged to, reach out to Neighborhood Legal Services, but there are some great online tools as well. Sacramento Law Library has templates for a claim of exemption for wage garnishment and one for a bank levy. The court has a fantastic self-help guide, and there's also a program online called After Pattern that, in certain circumstances, if you act quickly enough and you're within the time frames I mentioned earlier, they can help you to fill out a claim of exemption as well. Here you see a link to our website, a QR code for the same, our phone number for our general intake, and our email for the consumer debt and bankruptcy team. You're welcome to reach out to us for help with a claim of exemption. And thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope this presentation has been helpful.